Johnson, get out of here before we have to carry you out. You know, I was trying to hold up my end and do what I could, but I had pretty much hit my limit. And I staggered upstairs knowing that I should take a shower, but I just didn't have the strength to do it. So I just lay down in my bunk and couldn't move for 24 hours. I remember it was one of the sickest 24 hours I had ever felt. And from that point on, I was hyperreactive. I never recovered from that. That was my low point.
So you could tell, you knew that that was sort of the turning point for your body.
Yeah. I was so desperate that I used to sneak out of the barracks and go sleep in the motor pool at night.
To escape the mold that was in the barracks.
Yep. Yeah, I used to climb into the back of a 5-ton truck and pull the camouflage net over me so the duty guards wouldn't find me. And that's how I was trying to stay alive.
Wow.
So around the unit, I was barely functional. I mean, it was so difficult to get out of my rack in the morning, and I could hardly stand up. It took everything I could do to finish the 2-mile run, our daily 2-mile run. And then a opportunity came up in 1977. My unit was tasked with sending a team in a marching competition. Not exactly a competition, but an event, the 4-day Nijmegen Volksmarch. They wanted to send a military contingent to march in the grand event. And even though it's not a competition, it's like, don't come in last. But since every unit is told, don't come in last, the fact of everybody trying to not be last does make it a race.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a friend of mine told me about this Nijmegen March, and I had seen him after practice. In fact, walking back from the mess hall one day, I saw a whole bunch of people holding down my buddy while he's screaming. Yeah, he's on the ground on his back, and he's got people on his arms and legs holding him down, and he's screaming.
Why?
That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
So I immediately ran over to help. You know, so I'm jumping one of the guys who's holding him down, and he's going, wait, no, this is good. They're doing the good thing. And I'm going, are you out of your mind? I thought they were beating the hell out of you.
Yeah, really?
And it turns out that he had blisters in his feet, and they were injecting him with some green anti-blister agent, which had alcohol in it, so it was extremely painful. So it was customary when injecting for these blisters to hold people down so they don't thrash around and you don't hurt yourself on the needle. So he tells me about the wonders of this march and says, yeah, you ought to volunteer for this. And I'm looking at him going, volunteer for that?
Yeah, right. No thanks.
Well, I go, I'll do it.
Oh, gosh. You were a glutton for punishment, weren't you?
I go, this sounds like a challenge. This is a good thing. And besides, if I could do this march, that'll get me out of the barracks.
True.
Yeah, it's a couple months of practice. And
you sleep somewhere else?
No. Unfortunately, we did have to return. But during the day, I would be away from the barracks, the garrison area, in the fresh air, and I knew that I felt better away from the garrison. So I looked at this as a real opportunity. And I noticed that as long as I was out of the garrison area, I felt fantastic. I was unstoppable. And I got back on the grounds, and I would lose it again. So I kind of learned then that this was an outdoor problem, not necessarily an indoor problem. There was a zone around the entire building that spread for maybe half a mile. And within that zone, I was losing ground. So when the concept of sick buildings arose later, because remember, in the early 1970s, sick building syndrome wasn't even a concept yet. There was no term for it. It wasn't adopted by the World Health Organization. It was a complete unknown. So when they when I did first read about sick buildings, my first thought was, what exactly do they mean by this? Sick buildings, it's like you walk out the front door and it stops? I know that's not the case.
No.
So I approached this with a embedded concept that was already at odds with just about everything that the doctors were saying. I knew that mold was more toxic than they said. I knew that it wasn't just an indoor problem. I had an idea that it was a black mold. And I was already getting a good sense that one had to decontaminate or you would carry the effect with you. So with all these things in mind, when they started trying to tell me what their version was, I'm going, this can't be right. These people, no matter whether they claim to be top researchers or not, they don't have a clue. So I watched the development of the indoor air quality movement. Now, the sick building syndrome concept started after carpet fumes that were loaded with flame retardants started making people sick. That was the genesis of the sick building movement. And in 1976, we had the Legionnaires Outbreak, the famous one that caught headlines. And so as of 1976, that's what sick buildings were. It was chemicals and Legionnaire's disease.
Right, nothing to do with mold.
Nothing to do with mold. The first inkling that mold was involved in sick buildings didn't really happen until 1994, when
20 years later.
10 years.
Oh, it was 80s, okay.
Well, actually, yeah, 20 years after, okay, I'm talking about after Truckee High School. But the Cleveland sudden infant death syndrome outbreak, investigated by Dora Dearborn and Ruth Etzel, that was really the first time.
What year was that?
1994.
Okay.
All these children, I guess it was right next to Lake Erie, at some Rainbow Children's Health Center, a whole rash of sudden infant death syndrome, and this Dora Dearborn was called in, couldn't make heads or tails of it, but he saw pulmonary hemorrhaging. So it was thought to be an outbreak of inexplicable pulmonary hemosiderosis, which is a fancy name for lung bleeding.
But they still didn't know the cause.
And they didn't know the cause, and Ruth Etzel remembered seeing in the veterinary literature